Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In Puerto Rico, more than 90% of the island still does not have electricity from the power grid, and half the island does not have clean drinking water, now more than 2 weeks after Hurricane Maria. On Wednesday, the director of the Office of Management and Budget, Mick Mulvaney, contradicted President Trump's comments about wiping out Puerto Rico's billion-dollar debt amidst the catastrophic aftermath of Hurricane Maria.
Dealing with the challenges that Puerto Rico had. The island is at least $72 billion in debt, 120 if you go by other counts, before the storm. We are going to focus our attention right now on rebuilding the island, repairing the island, making sure everybody is safe, and that we get through this difficult times. We are not going to deal right now with those fundamental difficulties that Puerto Rico had before the storm. By the way, many folks have not talked about this yet, a lot of those issues are already dealt with through previous legislation called PROMESA.
Mulvaney was walking back comments Trump made on Tuesday when he spoke with Fox News' Geraldo Rivera that he would move to eliminate the island's debt. Meanwhile, federal officials are now concerned the damage from Hurricane Maria will lead to nationwide shortages of critical medicine and other supplies, since Puerto Rico is one of the world's biggest centers of pharmaceutical manufacturing. We'll have more on Puerto Rico with Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez of New York, originally born in Puerto Rico, right where Hurricane Maria made landfall just over 2 weeks ago. President Trump traveled to Las Vegas and met with victims of Sunday night's mass shooting in which Stephen Paddock, a 64-year-old white man, killed 59 people, including himself, and injured nearly 500 people. More than 120 are still hospitalized. On Wednesday, the FBI questioned his girlfriend, Mary Lou Danley, who returned from her trip to visit family in the Philippines to meet with FBI agents. She said she had no prior knowledge of Paddock's plans to open fire from the 32nd floor of his Mandalay Bay casino hotel suite onto more than 20,000 concert-goers below. More detail also emerged Wednesday about how Paddock had been stockpiling firearms, including buying 33 weapons in the past year alone from Nevada, Utah, California, and Texas. Authorities also say Paddock bought at least 12 devices known as bump stocks that allow semi-automatic rifles to act like machine guns capable of firing hundreds of rounds a minute. Some Republican lawmakers said Wednesday they'd be open to legislation to ban the sale of bump stocks. In Nevada, even some gun range owners are speaking out against the lax gun laws that allow people to purchase bump stocks and high-capacity magazines. This is gun range owner Genghis Cohen.
There's absolutely no reason for an average citizen who wants to have a gun to have a 100-round magazine. Okay? There's no reason for them to be able to buy accessories for their gun, which makes the gun almost fully automatic. There's just no reason for it.
In news from Washington, the head of the U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee Wednesday said the committee's concluded Russia interfered in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Senate Intelligence Committee Chair Richard Burr also said the committee's still examining whether the Trump campaign colluded with Russia.
The issue of collusion is still open, that we continue to investigate both intelligence and witnesses, and that we're not in a position where we will come to any type of temporary finding on that until we've completed the process.
CNN is reporting a number of Russian-linked Facebook ads seeking to polarize the U.S. electorate, specifically targeted Michigan and Wisconsin, two states crucial to Trump's victory in November. The ads focused on issues such as gun rights, immigration, LGBTQ rights, and racial justice protests like Black Lives Matter. The NAACP issued a press release saying, quote, the utilization of Facebook for propaganda promoting disingenuous portrayals of the African-American community or alleged election manipulation by foreign nations is both disturbing and reprehensible, unquote. A new investigation has revealed President Trump's adult children, Ivanka Trump and Donald Trump Jr., were nearly charged with felony fraud in 2012 for lying to people interested in buying apartments in Trump's Soho, the hotel and condo development in downtown Manhattan. The near-criminal prosecution was revealed in an article jointly published by The New Yorker, ProPublica, and WNYC. The article also reveals the case was dropped by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office only after Trump's personal attorney, Mark Kasowitz, visited Manhattan District Attorney Cy Vance Jr. in 2012, only months after Kasowitz donated $25,000 to Vance's re-election campaign. While Vance returned that $25,000 donation ahead of his meeting with Kasowitz, Vance went on to overrule his own prosecutors and instruct them to drop the case against Ivanka and Donald Trump Jr. 6 months later, Vance received a $50,000 donation from Kasowitz and his friends. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson held a hastily called news conference Wednesday in which he denied he's considered resigning over conflicts with President Trump.
The Vice President has never had to persuade me to remain as Secretary of State because I have never considered leaving this post. While I'm new to Washington, I have learned that there are some who try to sow dissension to advance their own agenda by tearing others apart in an effort to undermine President Trump's own agenda. I do not, and I will not operate that way. And the same applies to everyone on my team here at the State Department.
NBC News has reported Tillerson was on the verge of resigning last summer and that he called Trump a moron during a meeting at the Pentagon with cabinet officials and members of Trump's national security team in July. President Trump lashed out at NBC over the report, tweeting Wednesday, quote, "NBC News is fake news and more dishonest than even CNN. They're a disgrace to good reporting. No wonder their news ratings are way down," unquote. In international news, the U.S.-backed Iraqi military says it seized control of the northern Iraqi town of Hawija from ISIS. Hawija is home to tens of thousands of people and has been occupied by ISIS since 2014. It was one of the last ISIS-controlled territories in Iraq. The Egyptian government has launched a wide-scale crackdown against the LGBT community, arresting at least 34 people. The crackdown began when Egyptian authorities arrested a 22-year-old law student and 6 others for waving a rainbow flag during a concert in Cairo of the internationally renowned Lebanese band Mashru Leila, whose lead singer is openly gay. The New York Times reports Egyptian prosecutors say many of the arrests were made after authorities entrapped gay and trans individuals on social media or dating apps. Amnesty International says Egypt has carried out at least 10 torturous, forced anal examinations against those arrested during the crackdown. In Sweden, prosecutors have convicted a Syrian soldier of committing a war crime, marking the first war crimes conviction of a member of the Syrian military since the beginning of the ongoing war. Mohammed Abdullah has been living in Sweden for 3 years, the former soldier. The landmark conviction came after Syrian refugees in Sweden identified him and connected him to a photo he had posted on Facebook showing him smiling while standing over a pile of bloody corpses with his boot on one of the bodies. After years of pressure by the Syrian refugees, Abdullah was convicted in Swedish court of, quote, violating human dignity and has been sentenced to 8 months in prison. The Israeli military has forcibly sealed off the Israeli-occupied West Bank and besieged Gaza Strip for the next 11 days amidst the Jewish harvest holiday of Sukkot. Human rights groups say the border closures are illegal under international law. It prevents tens of thousands of Palestinians from getting to their jobs inside Israel. This comes as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has announced plans to expand a Jewish-only settlement in the West Bank, promising a development boom. These settlements are also illegal under international law. In Bangladesh, authorities have destroyed nearly 24 boats that are used to ferry Rohingyas fleeing the Burmese military's ethnic cleansing campaign. More than 500,000 Rohingyas have fled to Bangladesh amidst the violent crackdown. In Britain, the Oxford City Council has voted to strip Burma's de facto leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, of her Freedom of Oxford Award over the violence. Aung San Suu Kyi studied in Oxford in the 60s and met her husband there. Thousands have also called for her to be stripped of her Nobel Peace Prize. Meanwhile, back in the United States, the House has passed a bill that would make abortions illegal after 20 weeks, except when the life of the mother is at risk or pregnancy was a result of rape or incest. Women's health advocates say the legislation is unconstitutional. The White House supports the extreme anti-choice bill, but it's likely to face opposition in the Senate. In St. Louis, Missouri, massive protests continue over the acquittal of white former police officer Jason Stockley for the murder of 24-year-old African-American Anthony Lamar Smith. Police arrested more than 140 people overnight on Tuesday as protesters blocked traffic on Interstate 64. More than 300 people have been arrested since the protests erupted nearly 3 weeks ago. Among those arrested on Tuesday were 2 journalists with the news outlet The Young Turks. And prisoner rights advocate John Thompson has died at the age of 55. Thompson was a former death row prisoner who was exonerated after it was revealed that the Orleans Parish District Attorney's Office had suppressed evidence of his innocence. After winning his release in 2003, Thompson became a leading organizer against prosecutorial abuse. He also founded the organization Resurrection After Exoneration to support former prisoners' reentry into the free world. This is John Thompson speaking in 2013.
I spent 18 years of my life in prison. 14 of them was on death row. While on death row, I received 7 execution dates. I also watched 12 men be executed, leave off my tier to the death house, never return. Cruel and unusual punishment start there. You know, to watch a man that claimed to be innocent walk away, claiming his innocence all the way, and then you read it in the newspaper, or you know he don't return back to the tier because he had been executed.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Nermeen Sheikh. Welcome to our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.